Years ago, a colleague shared this story with me, and it stuck with me, maybe 25 years ago. But he was working with a couple, and the husband's dream was to own a Taco Bell franchise at some point. And he ran a restaurant, and in the restaurant, their policy was at the end of the week, they would divide up all the tips and he would get a piece of the action. And when he got the tips, he would bring the cash home, and they needed about $60,000 back 20, 25 years ago to buy a franchise with, I believe it was Taco Bell. And so during that period when they were trying to save the money, he became very, very controlling about money. This was his dream, to have a Taco Bell franchise. And I remember one time they had taken the kids, they had 3 children, young children, to the zoo, a park somewhere, and the kids wanted ice cream, and the wife was going up to buy the ice cream, and he pitched a big fit. We can't spend the money. We got to save everything so we can get the Taco Bell franchise. We can't just be buying ice cream. You know, we can put that aside. And of course, the wife was somewhat submissive and would go along with it, didn't buy the ice cream. And this went on for this desire to save every penny, went on for 3 years by the time my colleague saw them. But what happened was, after about 3 years of saving every dime, mainly cash from the tips, and he had been doing this, actually putting money aside even before he had married her. And so finally, and he gave her the money, and she would put it someplace and safe. And finally, and he was keeping tabs on it. And finally, he came home and said, "Well, we have, with this $300 I'm going to put in the pot, we're going to have $60,000. And the wife said, "Well, that's great. I'm very happy to hear that." So he was very excited, very happy. And the next day he came home a little early, and he said, "Go ahead and give me the money because I'm going to meet with the Taco Bell folks and give them the money, and we're going to start the process." So he said, "Would you mind going and getting me the money?" And she said, I don't have the money." And he said, "What do you mean you don't have the money?" And she just said, "I don't have the money." And he lost it. He just was totally out of control with anger. He didn't hit her, but he was screaming. They had young children. The kids were afraid. She found a way to get out of the house, and she went to her parents' house. The parents didn't live that far away. Didn't tell him where she, of course, didn't say, "I'm going to my parents." I mean, she was frightened. And the next day, she called him and told him that she was at her parents' house, and if he could control his temper, and he could come over and she would explain what happened to the money. So he went over to the house, and with her parents, her brother there as well. I mean, there was an environment where there was some control there. He knew he really couldn't act out. And he was a relatively mild-mannered person, the way I heard it. And but his dream had been shattered, you see. And so he said, well, tell me what happened to the money? And she said, I spent it. He said, well, what did you spend it on? And she said, shoes. You spent it on shoes? She said, well, I'll show you. So her parents, and I think there were two brothers, loaded up in cars and drove over to their house. And she took him and her family up into the attic, and there was box after box of shoes, never been taken out of the box. And the way my colleague shared what happened after that, I mean, they continued in therapy and got to the point that he forgave her. But this is a story about control and dreams. So when somebody is putting so much pressure on you that you can't buy the kids even an ice cream cone at the zoo, you can't buy yourself, in this case, the wife couldn't buy herself a new dress. She was pushing her to go to Goodwill to get the kids clothes. And what she said in therapy was that when this process started of saving, all she could think about was spending. So the moment you're forcing something on your dream on someone else, pushing it hard, in this case spending, all she dreamed about was spending. And she said when she would go buy the shoes, it did feel very good. So be careful about what your dreams are, and make sure your partner really shares them. And control in marriage doesn't work. Collaboration works, but control doesn't work.